Hey folks, welcome back to the Cam Rogers Show on this Monday morning. Very excited to say we have Kenny Albert on the line right now, legendary broadcaster at that. By the way, the only broadcaster to be currently calling all four major sports right now. Kenny, thanks so much for taking the time, sir. How are we doing?
I'm good, Cam. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And Kenny, of course, you just covered the Saints versus Bills yesterday. And that was just a straight up rout and something that obviously many people did not expect. How surprising was that outcome for you, just being there?
Well, you have to be really impressed with what the Saints have done. I've seen them 3 times this year now, and they've been road victories each and every time, in Carolina, in Green Bay, and now in Buffalo. And with the Bills getting off to the 5-2 start, had a little bit of a hiccup last week against the Jets, but they had been 4-0 at home, so we weren't expecting a blowout, which is what it turned out to be yesterday. But from a Saints standpoint, this is certainly a much different Saints, the way they win games, a lot different than what we've seen over the last 12 years under Sean Payton and Drew Brees. Yesterday, they set a franchise record with 6 rushing touchdowns. Their defense played great. The combination of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, they each rushed for over 100 yards. So it was the run game and defense that did it for the Saints yesterday, and I'm not sure how often we've been able to say that over the last 12 years.
You're absolutely right. All of a sudden, the Saints are a power run team right now, Kenny. We'll get to the Saints in a second, but I do want to start with the Bills here because obviously, as you said, big-time start for them, 5-2, best start since 2011. But that recent loss, Kenny, obviously is going to create a lot of doubters out there in the media world. And with you being there and seeing this Buffalo team, what exactly went wrong for them? And did you see some kind of loss of fight in them at the end of that game?
No, not at all. I think you just have to give credit to the Saints. There's another team out there on the field, and they had an unbelievable day. The Bills put together a good opening drive. LaShawn McCoy had a 36-yard run, but after that, you have to give a lot of credit to the Saints defense for slowing down the Bills. They only had 4 first downs in the first half. We saw Tyrod Taylor go to Kelvin Benjamin 3 times early. He only caught 1 of the 3, his first game after coming over from Carolina. But I think you have to give all the credit in the world to the Saints, what they were able to do, like I said, with their run game and their defense.
And sticking with the Bills here and talking about the overall AFC playoff picture at this point, Kenny, really seems like it's Patriots, Steelers, Chiefs, then a bit of a drop-off, and it's a little watered down at the bottom. So as we stand right now, the Bills are actually still very much in the mix in the AFC playoff hunt. Do you still see this team hanging around in contention to the end?
Well, I like what Sean McDermott's done, the program that he's put in place. I think if you told Bills fans before the season that they would get off to a 5-2 start, they would have signed up for that in a second. They have a tough schedule. They haven't played the Patriots yet. They have the Patriots twice in December. They have Miami twice in December. So, it'll be a big week this week to see if they can bounce back from the back-to-back losses to the Jets and the Saints.
The Saints are just absolutely on a tear. So it's 7 straight for them right now. They started 0-2, so obviously they turned it around with some adversity. And Kenny, I'm sure you remember the storylines with Adrian Peterson and the sideline kind of exchange with Sean Payton. Now, all of a sudden, they found their 2-headed monster, if you will, with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Just how impressive were they just watching them yesterday against Buffalo?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kamara, we could be looking at the Rookie of the Year in the NFL. When you take a look at what he's been able to do, they signed Peterson in the offseason before the draft. Then they wind up drafting Kamara in the 3rd round. Peterson had his struggles in New Orleans, wasn't getting the ball much. I did his first game out in Arizona. He was tremendous, rushed for over 100 yards against the Bucs. But the Saints, and their offensive line's a big story. When you look at the 5 different combinations that they've had to start with this season, Senio Kelemete has been sort of the 6th man of the year, to use the words of my partner, Rondé Barber. He's come in and played at so many different positions. Teron Armstead and Larry Warford were questionable this week, but they both were able to start yesterday and go the distance. So I think you have to give a lot of credit to their O-line as well.
Armstead actually had a fantastic block on that Drew Brees rushing touchdown yesterday, and it's nice to see some offensive linemen getting some highlights of the shows this morning. Kenny, talking about the Saints in terms of projecting forward. So you have the Eagles in the NFC, you got the Vikings as well, both playing really good football. But for the Saints and their ceiling, Kenny, could you see them in the Super Bowl?
You know, the teams you mentioned, I think you have to add the Rams to the mix. I saw them last week against the Giants. They've been on an incredible roll. The last 3 weeks, Cam, I've done the Eagles, the Rams, and the Saints, and they've outscored their opponents on average in those 3 games 44-12. So a lot could change. There are still 7 weeks left in the season. There's always a surprise team that comes out, during that last month, during December, and then perhaps goes on a roll. Obviously, you have some injury situations with the Packers, with Aaron Rodgers, and the Ezekiel Elliott situation in Dallas. But, right now, I think you have to look at those teams that we mentioned, Philadelphia, the Rams, New Orleans, and Minnesota, at this point, through 10 weeks, as the cream of the crop in the NFC.
Well, there's no doubt about it, and it should be a fun finish there in the NFC playoff hunt. Let's transition a little, Kenny, here to the hardwood. You've been covering the Knicks for quite some time, and I do want to get your initial reactions from what was that Carmelo Anthony trade to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I remember covering here at Chat Sports with the breaking news. What were your reactions when that went down?
Well, I think looking back, the Knicks did a terrific job in bringing in Enes Kanter and Doug McDermott. They've both been huge factors in the 7-5 start that they've gotten off to. So you have to give Steve Mills and Scott Perry a lot of credit for bringing in Kanter and McDermott from Oklahoma City. Kanter's had 3 games with over 15 rebounds. McDermott had a 20-point game last week. He's one of the best pure shooters in the NBA. So just looking at it from the standpoint of who the Knicks got back, I think they did a terrific job, and off to the 7-5 start over the first 12, and they have a big one against Cleveland tonight.
Big one indeed. And hey, I know it's early, Kenny, but the Knicks are floating around there in the Eastern Conference. So let me ask you this. Can they make some playoff noise towards the end of the season, or should we kind of take a step back a little bit?
Well, it is only 12 games, like you said, but it certainly has been an exciting start, and Porzingis has obviously been the key, averaging over 30 points over his first 11 games. And as we continue to watch his development, you just have to marvel at what he's been able to do this season. He's taken over as the leader of this club, and his performances to this point, like I said, have been just incredible and a lot of fun to watch.
And Kenny, doing some reading up on you, obviously, we do like to get to know our guests here on the Cam Rogers Show. And from what I understand, you started announcing at age 15, probably even earlier than that. So I do want to ask you, kind of as someone who always wanted to know what they wanted to do, were you in that same position where you were sold on becoming a broadcaster at a very young age?
Oh, absolutely. I got a tape recorder when I was 5 from my parents for my birthday, and I set up my room like a TV studio, radio studio, and I would announce games off the television. And as you said, when I was 15, I started working games for Cox Cable on Long Island, thanks to a gentleman named Roy Menton. They came to my high school to film a girls' basketball game, and I volunteered to announce the game, and did over 100 games for them over the next 3 years, no matter what the sport, basketball, hockey, football, baseball, soccer, lacrosse. So I felt like I had a head start on other kids who wanted to do it in college because I had the 3 years of experience with Cox Cable during high school.
Now, from what I understand, you actually played a little hockey back in the day at NYU, and I guess you scored the first goal in NYU Ice Hockey Club history. I got to ask you, is there a plaque for that somewhere at NYU right now, Kenny?
Boy, you really did your research. I think you'd have to search long and hard for a plaque. That was the first year of the NYU club hockey team, and they've come a long way. They've won a couple of national championships at the club level over the last 5 or 6 years. Back then we played our games at midnight at the old Sky Rink on 33rd between 9th and 10th. But that was back in December '86 against the College of Staten Island. First goal. I didn't score many, but I did score the first.
There you go. You can run away with that one. That's fantastic. Kenny Albert, ladies and gentlemen, joining the Cam Rogers Show here live. Kenny, what's coming up for you this week in the games that you're covering?
Well, it starts with the Rangers and Blackhawks in Chicago on Wednesday, and that's always a lot of fun, calling games at United Center, and on to Toronto for the Knicks and the Raptors on Friday night, and then down to Houston for the Texans and the Cardinals on Sunday.
He's a busy man, and he's one of the best in the industry. Kenny Albert joining the Cam Rogers Show here. Kenny, really appreciate the time and wish you all the best.
Thanks a lot, Cam. Anytime.